Evening, everyone. The time is 7:31 p.m. on Thursday, June 26, 2025, and I am calling the Village of Martins Additions Council meeting to order. Let's begin with recognizing the results of last month's council election. Congratulations and welcome to the newly elected council member, Alexa Spencer of Chestnut Street. And of course, congratulations to thrice elected Andrew, the vice chair and council member of Turner Lane. So well done, both of you. Their new terms begin July 1st. And now for the first item on our agenda, it's the Montgomery County Public Schools boundary study for middle and high school reassignments. For some background and context, MCPS plans to open the new Crown High School, expand Damascus High School, and reopen Charles Woodward High School. And as a result, MCPS is conducting a current survey study to address school overcrowding by redistributing the current school assignments. The study includes proposed redesign boundary lines, and it is receiving a lot of buzz on local community and school listservs, as well as media headlines. And why the issue is relevant to VMA is several residents with school-age children who would be impacted by the proposed options of redrawn boundaries have reached out to me to inquire what role the VMA Council will take going forward in submitting comments and feedback about the proposed options. For example, I met a family recently who moved to the VMA because we are currently in the BCC high school feeder, and that might possibly change as soon as the 2027-2028 school year. So I appreciate the work of our local PTSAs. I am a former PTSA officer and board member of Chevy Chase Elementary School in Silver Creek myself, as is Jeff Blander. So for tonight's meeting, I invited Juliana Manasseh Horowitz, an MCPS parent and member of the Silver Creek Middle School Boundary Study Committee. She's going to provide the latest update and possibly answer any resident questions about the issue and process, if you'd be willing, Juliana. Welcome. My apologies if I mispronounced your name. Thank you for accepting my invitation to speak tonight. And please correct me if I got any of that background wrong as well. And so the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. So I live in the Rockwood Forest area. I have a rising 8th grader at Silver Creek, and I have a rising 11th grader at BCC. And I'm the BCC cluster rep for Silver Creek. And I'm also heading up the boundary study committee at Silver Creek. And when my older son was at Rockwood Forest, that's when we went through the boundary study for Silver Creek when it was opening up. And so a lot of the same things that are coming into play right now in terms of the Rosemary Hills communities, the Rosemary Hills Elementary community and the Rockwood Forest Elementary community that were coming to play now came into play 10 years ago when they were opening Silver Creek. And so, so basically they're opening Woodward High School. And so far, MCPS has put out 4 possible options for how they would redraw boundaries within the county. So the Board of Education from the beginning has said that they wanted MCPS and the consultant who's working with MCPS to look at all these different schools, to not be limited by, to really cast a wide net in how they thought about these different boundaries. And I think a lot of people assume that meant that all the schools in the study could be affected, that they could look at all of them. But I don't think anybody expected pretty much everybody to be thrown into a mixing bowl and tossed around and ending up in a lot of different places. So this boundary study, all of the options basically affect all the schools. And so you could have some people going into the new Woodward High School and then somebody else coming into a different school. So it's not just taking kids out of overcrowded schools and figuring out who's going to go to Woodward, but it's really reconfiguring everything. And they have 4 criteria that they're using, which is what they've always used in boundary studies. And it is facility utilization, student demographics, geographic proximity, including walk zones and transportation access, and stability of school assignments over time. And so these 4 criteria were used back in 2016 And that's how Rockwick Forest and then Rosemary Hills and the two schools, CCS and NCC, ended up at Silver Creek. So right now the county is soliciting feedback from not just parents, but also community members. So you don't have to be a parent in MCPS to provide feedback. There's, if you Google MCPS boundary study, I'm also happy to send the link. You can see all the options, and there's a lot of data. It's pretty overwhelming, which is why it's been nice having a committee where we've all been sort of pouring through the data and trying to make sense of it. And there's a feedback form. They're calling it a survey, but it's really for every option. They're asking you to say in an open-ended question, what do you like and what do you dislike about this option? But they are also taking feedback in other ways. And so our committee is in the process of drafting a letter that we will send to MCPS, the superintendent's office, with copy to Board of Education members. And so, I'm happy to share that letter, and I can talk a little bit about like what our position is. And if that resonates with you and you want to write a similar letter, or if there are other issues at play for your community that you want to write a letter about. So you're not just limited to the feedback form that they have online. They are definitely, and they've been having these office hours, these Zoom office hours, and it's been a great opportunity to talk to an MCPS rep, and she's been really like taking note of what community are you calling about, like and so it's really important for people to give feedback on all of these. And I think one thing that there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding on this, because some communities have felt that what they have to do right now is to just pick the least bad of the options and, and say, I'd rather go with option 1 because option 3 is so bad, right? But right now there's going to be another set of options that come out in September, and they'll be added to these. So they're not going to replace these first 4 options. They're going to be added to the mix, and then they'll collect more feedback once they have those options. And then they'll send all the feedback, all the recommendations to the superintendent. He's going to come up with his own option to recommend to the board. It could be one of the ones, it could be exactly like something that MCPS has put out. It could be some combination. It could be whatever he decides. And then he will send that to the board at the end of the year or early 2026, and the board will vote. And so at that point, the board will hold hearings and testimony. And at that point, the board can choose to adopt his recommended option as is. It can adopt it with modifications, or it can send it back. Nobody expects the board to send it back completely and say, go back to drawing board. So whatever the superintendent recommends, it'll either be that or that with some modifications. And so that's the process. And so everything we've heard from MCPS so far is that right now is a time to advocate for what you would like to see. So in the upcoming options, like what are you not seeing? So for us, there is no option that keeps Silver Creek exactly as it is right now, but there is an option that keeps Westland as it is right now, right? And so Silver Creek is where pretty much all of the racial, ethnic, socioeconomic diversity in the BCC community comes from the Rockwick Forest and the immediate Rosemary Hills neighborhoods. And yet there is no option where all the elementary schools that go to Silver Creek and then to BCC continue on that path. There's an option for that for Westland. There's an option for that at Whitman and Pyle going to Whitman. There's an option for that for Newport Mills and Einstein. So we're not asking for anything that other schools don't currently have. We're not asking for Silver Creek to be special, but we're basically advocating for what we would like to see in upcoming options. And so the couple of things that we've been focusing on are, and we've gotten guidance from our MCC PTA area vice president and from MCPS that making the case for community stability is really important. And so we're making the case, of course, for Rosemary Hills. Having CCS and NCC come back together in middle school has been a really important thing for the social cohesion of Rosemary Hills, because there's an incentive for those families to be a community and to continue those bonds as they go through CCS and NCC, because they know they're going to be reunited. So that's an important thing. For Rosemary Hills, it's also stability of school assignment, because they're already split. That's the only there are other K through 12 schools in MCPS, but they all in third grade go to the same school, so those kids all stay together. Rosemary Hills is the only one that splits into two. And so some of the options will then further split each of these schools. And so, you know, by the time you get to middle school, you're splitting for the third time and for the second time. And for, you know, the kids who will be rising 10th graders when this new school opens, they could be moved. And so for some of these kids, it could be the fifth school that they're being sent to. And so there's that. And then, you know, the Rockwood Forest neighborhood and the immediate Rosemary Hills neighborhood are adjacent communities that are essentially one neighborhood. We have the Cofield Center that serves, you know, both areas. We have a pool, we have the gym. Like, it's, you know, those kids have a relationship. They're in scout troops together. And so
Community, yeah.
for all of that, when they go to Silver Creek together, and then they meet up with the NCC, the CCS kids, right, Silver Creek's a great community, and that really helps also like the lower income families, because those bonds have been established since elementary school. So our PTSA really does a lot to provide for those families. And so that's the argument, and also the argument about transportation challenges, especially for the Rockwood Forest and immediate Rosemary Hills neighborhood kids in the lower income families, that especially at BCC, you know, being able to take the Metro bus down East West Highway. So if they need to stay after school for sports, for tutoring, they have access, very easy public transportation access to Silver Creek. They can bike on the Rock Creek Trail. And so those are the arguments that we're making right now for why not just we should stay together, but we at least would like to see at least one option where that happens, you know, and then we can decide if that's the option we want to advocate for. So that's where we are. That's what we're working on. And I'm happy to share any materials afterwards if you want to see it. We're still editing the letter a little bit, but once we get it out, I'm happy to share it. But that's what we've been doing. And, you know, I think to the extent that all these different communities can work together and make the case together that we like all of the schools at Silver Creek to go together, I think that'd be great. But I also understand that different communities have different needs. And so I just encourage everybody to provide the feedback, because that's super important.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, thank you. And you said the most important thing I wanted to hear tonight is that it's time to advocate is now. And it sounds like this is a power in numbers type of situation. Would you be, Juliana, thank you so much for the update. Would you be open to some questions from my council members and residents? Okay, Andrew has a question.
Yeah, thank you
He's
so
a
much.
Silver Creek parent.
Yeah, thank you so much. Super helpful. I have 3 boys that went Rosemary Hills, CCES, and Silver Creek. I guess my questions are, I have 3. The timing is earliest or latest 26, 27 calendar year for their kids. I mean, or, you know, do you have any idea? I looked at some of these options. I couldn't quite figure out what was the best option for us. It was really complicated the way it was spelled out. And I'm surprised to hear that they could stand up an entire high school so quickly with teachers and admin staff. I guess this is Woodward has been closed, and they're planning on opening it up. So more or less the question is timing, and then also for our purposes, proximity. You mentioned demographics, and Katie in her intro talked about BCC. I mean, you know, I'm hoping that continues to be an option for kids coming out of Silver Creek, because it is much closer. Woodward is, I think, on Old Georgetown Road. That's quite a hike compared to BCC. So feel free to answer any and all, or if you don't have an answer, it's fine too.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So for the timing, so they were going to make a decision, an announcement in spring 2026, but then the new boundaries don't go into effect until fall 2027. So the idea is that it gives families plenty of time, you know, maybe I don't know if you want to move, go to private school, whatever it is, like they're giving families more than a year from the time that they make this announcement. And so the new school will open fall 2027. And what that means is that they will open the new school. So all these changes are going to go into effect for freshmen and sophomores. And so like if you have a rising 7th grader at Silver Creek, depending on where this all falls, I actually think I'm looking at it right now, and you guys are CCES, right? So for CCES, all of the current options on the table, except for one, well, actually, it's more complicated than that. They're splitting up, some of these options
Yeah.
split up each, like, so for some of these options, your child would still go to BCC, but some of their friends might not,
Mhm.
right? And so like, and then I have a rising 8th grader, so the rising 10th graders at that time, they could be moved, right? So their options for my kid, because it was Rock Creek Forest kid, where he stays at BCC and half of his friends from middle school go somewhere else, right? And so it's a little bit complicated, because even within CCES, there are options where one, like the kids who live in the Rosemary Hills part of CCES would go to Whitman, and your part of CCES would go to Blair, but nobody thinks that option, like that option is not something that, like, that's a crazy option where everybody all over the county is moved all around. And transportation costs would be crazy. Nobody believes that's a serious option. So for most of the options, your like CCS kids would still go to BCC. It's a question whether their NCC friends or their Rock Creek Forest friends would also go to BCC, and that depends on the option. So anyway, so that's the, and it's not, you know, you could go to a different school and then go to BCC, right? There are options where CCS would go to Westland, or part of CCS would go to Westland, but then part of NCC and Rock Creek Forest might go to Silver Creek. There's one where, and you know, Rock Creek Forest goes to Sligo, to Sims. So there's no, that's one of the things that with the study, a lot of the schools split, not just in our cluster, but like all over. There are lots of elementary schools that split, and the middle schools that split into different high schools. So, but the timing is announcement in early 2026, opening, you know, goes into effect in fall 2027. And I should say the timing for the feedback for this round of feedback is July 15th.
July 15th. Okay.
That's the feedback for the survey. And so that's, yeah. And so that's the feedback if you want to send letters.
Yeah, and we'll drop the survey in the chat. But oh, and Juliana, could I ask you if you can answer a question for Jeff Blander? He is also a Silver Creek parent, that's right, and former Chevy Chase Elementary. And we were all our office is above the Rosemary Hills bus stop, which is a major hub. So we are all bus stop. We were all once bus stop parents. The bus stop. So Jeff, did you have a question for Juliana?
Well, first, just a comment, but Juliana, thank you. First of all, thank you so much. You probably recognize me from the names on the emails. I was part of the I was one of the SVPs and then the recruiting committee for this year. So thank you for your service and all your goodness and time. A couple of things. First, this was really immensely helpful. I want to just make a couple of comments and then a final point. And I see that our extraordinary legal counselor, Ron Bolt, is here, and it was a question for him. So first, observation. I feel that we're coming just from a lot of information on the rezoning, right, around housing. And now we have this. You know, I lived up in Cambridge, Massachusetts for years, and we had a kind of a moniker. It was called the People's Republic of Cambridge because of it was, you know, the views, the kind of the far left sort of thing. And it feels like maybe Montgomery County is kind of getting that moniker of the People's Republic of Montgomery County, because we keep getting like these proposals that just seem a little bit misaligned with what is happening. And the idea, like you said, some of those I looked at it pretty much in detail. Some of those proposals really seemed like taking, and I think that's what, and I'll get to the point around VMA, but, you know, taking folks who are from the Chevy Chase, you know, zip and busing them all the way across. It just seemed really counterintuitive. And now it gets to the final point that I have is I know there are residents who have really expressed concern because they bought into here, not just VMA, but in other catchments because they wanted to, you know, they bought into the school system. You know, that was perhaps one of the biggest considerations they had. And so this really has material concern of families who've come and moved here with the idea there's now uncertainty about where their kids may go if they choose to pursue the public path. So this now is the question, Ron, as we get our facts together on this, right? And Juliana has been amazing, and I'm sure will continue to provide us thoughts and guidance and perspectives. I am now selfish for the VMA residents who are concerned about various options or want to know very clearly which options will most adversely affect them where they may be bused outside of, the normative areas, is it appropriate for the council, if it were a majority decided this was the right thing to do, for us to submit as a council the concern? Because again, I don't know if it would get to the point of actually affecting property values, but I can say that there are folks who've moved here that may seriously have considered not moving here and going somewhere else where this would not have been an issue if it takes effect. So Ron, over to you.
Yeah, sure. I think it would be permissible if the council wanted to weigh in on this proposal as a constituent service to its residents. It would certainly be within your jurisdiction to do so.
Okay.
If I can just jump in, just for some, just from everything I've been hearing from MCCPTA, from MCPS, just something to consider is that arguments about property values will not be persuasive for MCPS and for the Board of Education. And so, I mean, you can do that, but it's just something that we've all been hearing, that's not what they want to hear, how it impacts the kids. They do want to hear about the challenges of lower income kids, because this is something that's happening in this entire part of the county. And so I think if this is perceived as wealthier areas advocating for their property values, that might not be seen as a positive thing for them. Just something that I wanted to put out there, because we've been hearing that a lot.
I mean, I think I totally get that. That's maybe the wrong messaging based on what the goal is with this boundary study. Having said that, I still think, and we can consult with Ron, that a letter, because we know the quality of the education also. Let's talk about the quality of education that we bought into when we moved here, whether it's Rosemary Hills, CCES, Silver Creek, or BCC. And so maybe that's more in line with the argument and kind of pulling the rug from underneath us with this study. I guess so we can debate this or discuss this separately. Is there an option G? There seems to be so many options, A, B, C, D, that is no change, or there will be 100% change?
Well, there will be change. I think the question is, and people, like we're advocating, but then there's also like so many cluster affected, every PTSA, from elementary schools to high schools, like everybody's advocating, right? And so I think there could be an option that there's there's going to be a change because they're opening a new school and they have to fill that new school. So there's going to be change for somebody. I think that with enough pressure, maybe there's an option where everybody, right now the options seem to be like maximum disruption. And maybe they do come up with an option where, like it makes sense. And I think the WJ cluster when the school was open, the understanding was that it was being open to alleviate overcrowding at WJ. Obviously, they can't fill that whole school just with the just with the overflow of WJ. So they have to figure out how else they're going to fill that school. But I think with enough people in different clusters advocating similarly to us, that like it's disruptive for their communities. Like, people have we're not the only ones that have strong community ties. And so it could be that the superintendent and the board do come out with maybe one of the new options on the table in September. It could be one that doesn't disrupt everybody, that only moves certain kids to fill this new school. So there's gonna be change somewhere. There has to be, because there's a new school. But hopefully there will be some options that aren't as disruptive for everybody. I think a lot of us are especially concerned for the kids who will be rising 10th graders at that point. Right. And right now, almost every rising 10th grader is disrupted, either because they leave or their friends leave, like from every school. And I do think we'll see at some point some option that doesn't do that. And also from just a transportation perspective, like you would have to send a bus to the, because some kids are going to move and some kids aren't, right? Because if you have a 12th grader still at BCC, but the 10th grader might be going to WJ, and now you're sending 2 buses to Rockwick Forest and 2 buses to the CCS area, right? One to send kids to BCC and one to send kids to WJ, and that's happening all over. And obviously, the county doesn't have the resources to do that. So I think at some point they can't. do what they want to do, I don't think, but.
Thank you, Julianne. We have another
One very
council
quick
question.
I've lived in jurisdictions where there was open enrollment. Go it wherever you want. Has this ever been considered?
Not that I know, not that I know. Not to throw another complication into the mix here, because this is a whole other thing and I don't know enough about this other part. The county MCPS and the Board of Education are also going through a different study to look at academic programs. And so, you know, there's a down county consortium where if you live in, you know, like it's the area, there's like Einstein, Wheaton, Kennedy, Blair, et cetera, you can go to the school you're zoned for, or there are all these different programs like magnet programs and performing arts, and you can apply. There's a lottery, there's different ways to get into these programs. And I don't live in the GCC, so I don't really know exactly how that works. And so this new academic study program is designed to create regions. And so for example, BCC probably wouldn't have an IB program anymore. You wouldn't have like a school that has a program that only kids in that school are entitled to. And so it would become a regional program. So almost like multiple down county consortium type things. And so in that sense, there could be some choice, but it wouldn't be open enrollment. Yeah, I don't think MCPS has ever.
But it's like partial open. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
If I could make one quick comment, and this is more of a comment, and we could maybe take it up another time, or, I mean, and I just put out there, Ron may know more about it, or we can always have a separate discussion. I mean, part of this is we're experiencing this because of the way the state and the county manages taxes and how the systems are funded. And so, for example, the Montgomery County, my understanding, is considered one school district. And that is huge because that, Julianne, you probably know the statistics. Was that like 500 schools? I mean, it's a large number of schools, but it's considered one district. And we don't pay, for example, we live here in Chevy Chase or the Zip, but we actually don't pay a school tax. It comes out of like the general tax revenue. So the reason why it's important is because Montgomery County and the superintendent's office can act like a corporation and look at things across the entire county versus, let's say, a state like New York. Your district is legitimately your zip code. And so you would never see something that is this dramatic, because when you buy into that neighborhood, you are literally not only buying the neighborhood, but your taxes go to that school. And that's why it's just so different, is that even though, and that's a misnomer, you may think by buying here into this zip code, you have the rights to the schools like a Chevy Chase Elementary. The reality is that you don't have that same right because your taxes are not going directly to that school. They're going to a general pool. I just want to put that out there as something that I don't think a lot of people, unless you delve into this, you don't see the differences. And that's why things like this can happen, because you really don't have as much control as you think within your particular zone. Anyway.
Another question?
Yeah.
Oh, this is our village manager, Michael Silliman, Juliana. He has a question for you or comment.
Yeah, I just had a question. Thank you for coming again. I had a question about the timeline for this. You mentioned more options coming out. And also we have been working with some of the neighboring municipalities, and we're putting together a joint public meeting on this issue with school board president Yang, or school board chair, I think, Yang, on July 7th at 7:30. So I'm wondering, as far as timeline for us to, you know, if we were going to write a letter or start advocating for one of these options, do we have a sense of how fast this is moving?
Yeah, I mean, like I would say, because the deadline for the survey is July 15th, I would say try to get it in by then if you're writing a letter. And Julie Yang might have a different, you know, she might have some other thoughts on the timeline. And I'm actually planning on being in that meeting too, because the couple of CCS people on our committee couldn't make it. And so they forwarded the invite to me, because I just want to hear, just from more like from a strategy perspective, I'd like to hear what Julie Yang has to say. But yeah, we're operating under the assumption that we should get our letter in by July 15th, because the idea is that then they're going to process all the feedback that they've been gathering, and it's a lot of feedback, so that they can come out with a new set of recommendations in September. And so I think that within the next couple of weeks, I think it'd be good to get that in.
That was my question. If they're coming out with additional suggestions in September, I guess there's another opportunity as another round of letters and
Yes.
advocacy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so, yes, exactly. And so that's why, like right now, we're advocating for what we'd like to see. And then once all the options are on the table, then we can advocate for the actual option that we think is the best for us. And so I think that, so for PTSAs, for example, like right now, we're not advocating for any one of the options, in part because none of them do what we want them to do, but also because this all happened at the end of the school year, and without a PTSA general membership vote, we can't say this is the position of the PTSA. And so I think, at least from the school community perspective, like I think when we come back in September, we come back after the summer, that's when we're going to start. And this is just like drawing on my experience from the 2016 boundary study. That's when we're going to start surveying the community. You know, they've been very clear that it's really important that all segments of the community are represented. And so our letters, our emails that have been going out to the Silver Peak community have been in English and Spanish, and, you know, making sure that we do outreach to some of the communities that would be most impacted by going to farther away schools and the transportation challenges that they would have. And so all of that for the school communities, at least, it's very hard to do in the summer. And so that's when we'll start having PTSA meetings and really trying to, right now, we've just been trying to really get the point across that these are not the only options. We don't have to settle for one of these four. And we've had some talking points for people if they want to just copy and paste into the survey of like each of the options, like what the issues are. But yeah, and there will be time for, yeah. So in September, when they come out, they'll go through the same process of, they'll probably have a feedback form and they'll go through the same process. And then they'll gather that and then send their recommendations to the superintendent, who will then come up with his own recommendation for the board. And then
great.
really quickly, the other
Yeah.
thing I was going to say, like, it's great that you're meeting with Julie Yang. And then when you send your emails to MCPS, to the superintendent, one thing that we've heard is that it's really important to copy the board members, because even though the board itself won't vote, like they don't have a say until there's actually something in front of them, and they're not involved with coming up with the boundaries. They're in constant contact with MCPS. And if they say, I've been hearing this from my constituents, then they can at least put pressure on MCPS superintendent. And so even though they're not voting on it until early next year, definitely copy them, make sure that they know where their constituents stand. And that's really important.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Juliana. Would you be open to a couple of questions? I'm cognizant of your time and I don't want
No,
to
it's
keep
fine.
you much.
Yeah,
Do we have any residents that had a question? I see a few out there. I don't, if there's any hands up, I didn't see. If not, then I
don't
think
see any
you've
hands.
covered it. Okay. And
Good.
I don't think we have any more council
Comprehensive and
questions.
thorough.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And once we have the final draft of our letter, I'm happy to share it. And
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
please.
fine.
if it's helpful for you to
And
see what Silver
And we'll
Creek.
put the boundary study, we'll put in the chat. And thank you again for joining and speaking to our VMA community. I hope you and your family have a great summer. You're welcome to stay on, but
No, that's okay.
it's gonna be
Thank
a
you,
long
though.
but have a great summer.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you very much for all your help. Thanks. Okay, well, speaking of summer, Keith Allen, what's going on? Why is it so hot? With the weather report.
Well, I'm happy to announce to everybody that the heat wave is, as of today, is pretty much history.
Oh,
Not to say we're not going to get some more hot, humid weather, but all eyes right now are on Sunday for the picnic and the 4th of July next week. Right now, it looks like we could have things turn out pretty good in our favor. I wouldn't rule out some mid to late afternoon thunderstorms, but I think the least chance is going to be on Sunday. Be a
Okay.
better chance, much better chance tomorrow, a good chance on Saturday, and somewhat of a chance on Sunday. And looking ahead to the 4th of July, it looks pretty nice right now. Lower humidity,
Yes.
and looking down the road, I don't see any more 100-degree temperatures. We never actually hit 100 degrees here, that we officially did not.
Oh.
Baltimore, the Inner Harbor had 104. BWI was 101. There are a lot of 100-degree temperatures around, but we didn't get, because you got a river breeze.
I got 97 as the highest.
Right, and that's,
Our yard.
I was in the upper 90s here too.
Mhm.
I was 99. So, but you know, but 99, 101, 102 with the dew points in the low to mid 70s. What's the difference of a couple of degrees? Anyway.
Do our trees help keep that?
Oh,
down under-
yes.
Very much.
Our
Oh, yes.
trees. There you
So
go.
what I'm trying to say is that pretty much the heat wave is in the rearview
Oh,
mirror.
good.
Tomorrow, we're gonna get what's called a backdoor cold front. Most cold fronts come from the west, and we get a northwest flow, and that clears things out, lowers the humidity, and cools things down. This front that's coming through tomorrow is gonna be somewhat of an east-west oriented front. And the forecast is a challenge, because the front's gonna get hung up right through the area here, so that the northern suburbs and up through northeast Maryland, Baltimore, Anne Arundel County, they could be in the 70s tomorrow, and it could be 90 degrees in our southern suburbs. In between, I'd say we're gonna be like low 80s or around 80 tomorrow, with chance of showers in the morning and showers and thunderstorms again in the afternoon.
Okay.
So that's if, are there any questions from the audience? You got any questions for the weatherman?
It's all about timing. It's typical that you show up after the heat wave, not before.
Yeah, right.
Announcing a
Right.
cooling
I
down.
guess there's no questions now, but I'll be back in a little while with the committee updates.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you, Keith. Thanks so much. All right, resident comments. Thank you all for waiting. I hope you enjoyed our guest speaker tonight. I don't see any hands raised. Going once,
Let's not wait.
going twice.
Okay.
Okay,
Next
all
item.
right, I'll just keep moving on. Well, that would be the approval of our May 15th council meetings. Has everyone had a,
I read them and I move to approve them.
all right? is there a
Second.
Second, all in favor?
I
Great.
see Susan.
Now we have
Sadik is
Susan
here.
remotely tonight
Yeah.
joining us, and did we get Susan's?
Susan, are you in a place where you're able to vote?
Or if not, that's okay.
Oh, she dropped off.
Oh, did she fall off?
No,
No,
she's
she's there.
there.
On the
She's
right.
there.
Oh, okay,
Okay. Okay.
no, okay, oh, so passed, minutes passed, we're good? Okay, all right, next on the agenda, let's keep moving. Committee reports, is that right? Okay, well, first I should say thank you to all the residents who volunteered to serve on a VMA committee and or task force this year, and to the committee and task force liaisons from the
Let me
council.
add to that. I was on liaison water committee and election,
Yes,
and they both committees did a huge job.
yes,
Competent,
Understood.
worked hard,
yeah.
and I thank them for their participation.
So you pulled double duty. We also have a special shout out to residents who served on
And
both the committee and
several-
task force.
yes.
Yasmina, CEC and Stormwater, Elizabeth Goldberg, election and Stormwater. So to close out the books, in FY 2025, we're going to hear a year-end committee reports and from the 3 standing committees and the task forces as well. Do we have task force
Yes. Yes.
reports? Okay. All right, well, then why don't we start with CEC? Okay, since you're here in the room.
Good.
And Keith, your end of the year report is in the packet on page 8.
Okay.
You don't have to read it. You can just talk.
Okay. All of the events that we've had have been very successful. I think everybody's enjoyed them and everything has turned out very well. The La Ferme event and the celebration on the sidewalk couldn't have worked out better. The other things that we did, and I'm gonna let Yasmina talk about that a little bit, is because I've got the best committee people in the world. I mean, really, I'm just sort of a figurehead on the committee. The ideas are all from the ladies and from David. And going forward, I'd like to have them volunteer again for the next year. And if they'll have me as their chair, I'd be honored to continue to serve. But right now, all eyes, as I said before in the weather report, are on Sunday.
Mhm.
And I think we've got things all ready and all set to go. We've got food trucks, we've got the Good Humor Man, we've got a giant water slide and a smaller slide for the littler kids, and we've got a dunk tank. We got a lot of good stuff going for our event. So everybody's looking forward to that. And I'd like to bring Yasmin up here to say a few words too.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you. And Keith, thank you for all you do. You're always on site at all of the events, breaking things down, building them up. You're always
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I think that's really been the pleasure
Mhm.
of being on this committee, has been Keith's leadership and the historic memory that he brings and the engagement in the community. Like, he's there at every event.
Every event.
And making sure everyone's okay and everything's done. It's been a really fantastic group this year.
Mhm.
Just great volunteers, David Salter, Susan Mitchell, absolutely wonderful too. Paul McGowan, just great returning volunteer. So there was we tried to do a lot of, we tried to expand a little bit of what we were doing this year. We brought in new events,
Mhm.
really with a focus of engaging adults at the beginning, because we were recognizing that there were a lot of family events going on in the village, and that was a great thing. Everyone enjoyed them, but we wanted to create more opportunities for adults to get together. We had 3 new events. We added the Night of Lights in December, which was a family event, but one where adults could also mingle. Weren't so lucky with the weather, but we're going to try again next year. December is a tough one.
We really did. It showed how much people like something like that, even in the midwinter that way,
Yeah, I mean, the
especially
turnout
around
was
the
amazing.
holidays.
Really great participation and just appreciated that. We had also a movie night at the Avalon, which was a lot of fun. Thank you, Andrew, for coming to that. You know, this was our first experience having an event slightly outside of the village. And that may be something that we want to hear from the community about, whether, you know, folks want that kind of thing to continue, whether they think that's a good idea and they would participate in the future. We also added on an ice skating morning at the Captain John Ice Rink, which was fun. It was really nice to see some kids hitting the ice skating rink for the first time and having the space to do that in a very safe way. And so that was fun too. And then I should mention another 4th new events that we were proposing, and thank you to the council for its support of that event. And it's in the budget for next year, which is potentially a wine tasting event. So definitely an adult event. But that
I can do that a lot better than ice skating.
see, there's a little bit for everyone, yeah.
Me
So
too.
just looking forward to next year, and hopefully we'll have just
Same
great
people.
volunteer
Yeah,
engagement
same.
as well. And
That's right.
thank you to the council for your support of the events and our incredible liaisons as well. Susie, thank you, and Susan Petit, who's I think online.
Yep, she's doing some.
Just really appreciated all of your support.
Yeah, thank you all.
One last thing
Tremendous.
about the celebration on Sunday is we've decided for the first time really to have alcohol. And we're going to go forward with that. And I think maybe we'll actually get more people to come to it for that.
All right.
Thanks, dear.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
I see.
Well, I see Mark
Mark
Schaefer
Schaefer
is
is
on. Yeah, Mark Schaefer, would you like to go next? Sorry to just call randomly on
Yeah.
people, but how about Mark Schaefer for Stormwater and Groundwater Task Force?
I appreciate it.
See, I think you're on mute. Is he on mute?
Yes.
Okay. Let's not unmute you.
I have to tell you that while I no longer have kids in middle school, I totally get how serious all this is. It reminds me of all the things I used to think of when I was a kid. I think it's great that you guys are working on this, and I want to thank you for it.
Thank you.
I also regret following the community engagement committee because they're so much fun. and they make the environment here so wonderful. But I'd like to challenge Keith to like a pickleball contest between our two, his committee, my task force, to see who has the best members. The problem is that there's overlap, so we couldn't even do it.
It's true.
Because I was going to say that I have the best committee member group in terms of attitude, approach, diligence, dedication, thoroughness, and thoughtfulness that I've ever had in all the committees I've been on. So I'm thrilled with these people. And I agree with, like Keith, they make me better. So I've done so many reports with you. I think we'll skip if you don't mind, we'll skip the founding first period in 2023 and through 2024 and go directly to what we did in 2024, 2025. First thing we did was we met with Arthur and Jeff and Michael Silman to revise the prior recommendations that I had drafted for the council to appropriate to hire an engineer and what the RFP might look like, including task and budget. And we wound up working with those two guys. We wound up with a much better product. Eventually, the RFP was recommendation was presented to you, and you passed it and approved the budget. And then what we did was we worked with Michael a little bit to polish up the RFP, but he did the laboring or we just wanted to make sure our little issues were covered. And the RFP went out. We received 3 proposals, and Yasmina, Elizabeth, and I, because Michael was not on the committee yet, the task force yet, reviewed them, scored them, and made our recommendation. You all approved our recommendation, Bayland, which was by far superior to any of the other proposals. And quite frankly, Megan and her team have proved that that was the right decision. They are just a delight to work with. They're very thorough. They're very receptive. They're very open. They hear us and they address our concerns and they educate us. And they're, as you can see from the presentation on the 18th, they really know what they're doing. So what we did after the Baylands was hired is we asked Michael and Baylands to amend our contract a little bit to make sure that we had a tight grip on the deliverable substance, because there's only so much detail you can put in a contract, but there were a few things that we thought would help Michael and us control Baylands' product. Michael agreed, signed off, and Baylands agreed without any argument. So that worked out really well. Then what we did is we met with Baylands and shared with them all of the things we had collected. Documents from the other villages, documents from Martin's Addition, documents from the county, academic documents that we found, our survey results, and talked about how all the research would continue and get done, and set up a schedule where we meet with them. We had a kickoff meeting to talk about how we would do this, and we decided we would meet with them monthly, and so far that's gone really well. The discussions are very productive, and we're very confident in the quality of the report we're going to get. Whether or not it satisfies everybody is a wholly different question, because the only public viewing we've given is in our newsletter reports and our monthly reports, and then the June 18th meeting, which I think went really well. There were 20 residents there. The reactions were very positive and very helpful. We're encouraging them to continue to work closely with us, keep an eye on us, submit questions to our email. Michael recorded the presentation. I recommend that if you weren't there, you watch it. I believe Michael was preparing a transcript, but I don't know where we are on that, but that might be a faster way to read it. But it would be, our view is that the more people who know what we're doing and ask questions and give us feedback, the more likely we'll have a collaborative approach at the end, because that's what it's going to take. If some of the things that conceivably could be done are recommended to you and you approve them and create a plan, the implementation is going to require resident cooperation and collaboration and support. So like I said, we had 20 people there. There were 54 people who registered problems in the survey. So we're reaching out to them to see what's up and whether they want to have some input. And we are talking to people regularly. Now, let me just look at my notes here for a second. Balin carried most of the show on the 18th, which is what it should be. I think the only thing we added was to try to give it context. This was a presentation of where we are now without any decisions being considered even. Although we sort of know that the code and some residential green infrastructure work are going to be part of it. Educating the community is going to be part of it. Finding funding is going to be part of it. We sort of know that part, but in terms of the gray infrastructure, the cement stuff, we're not there yet. We're nowhere near yet. But there's probably going to have to be some things to be done because our sewer lines are built for like 40 years ago or 50 years ago, and they don't take all the water in a timely way. The other thing we've done is we're going to reach out to all the local sections, like I said, and I've started with section 3, and we're scheduling a meeting. And obviously, I can't commit the village to anything, but we can explore mutual concerns and successes and failures, and maybe funding sharing some way. Arthur and I talked about this once. If we need a ongoing engineer like Somerset has, maybe the villages can share the cost. But we'll see. So that's what we've done this year. Are there any questions about what we've done? And then my next point would be what we're recommending needs to be done.
Mark, I would just add to what you said that the Bayland engineers walked through 70 different properties in the village to examine close up the various situations, the drainage, the slopes, and so on. So they're not just looking at maps, they've trudged up and down, checking out the topography and the situation.
Right. There were two walkthroughs. Thank you for reminding me. Somehow that slipped this brain. The first one was a look at homes of people that were on our list from the survey as having had a concern and who gave us permission. Ron got us to do that the correct way. Gave us permission to come onto their property and look at it. And then several times we talked with them. They would come out and talk. We all took notes. Balin took notes. All of the members took notes. And then the members consolidated all of our notes into this spreadsheet that Michael had developed from the survey, which is now sort of our bedrock for organizing our information, Michael's work. And so we've got all our notes. Then Balin is integrating their notes into it. And so we're going to have like a story. We're going to have a spreadsheet that literally has a story. Balin's then walked for topography. I didn't participate in that. Some of you, I believe Michael did. I don't know who else did. But that's sort of a different way, different analysis. But as one of the residents pointed out at the June 18th meeting, combining what the residents are concerned about with the waterfall, with the flow, with the topography, it all needs to be in one physical image. And so I believe that Balin was working on pulling that together so you can see the whole story visually on its charts. And they were going to expand the size, and then we'll be posting those charts for people to look at. So I think, oh, Arthur, you walked that whole first inspection.
That's right. You get a better sense of the hydrology, the flow, the topography, how all that interacts with construction and structures and so on. So I'm no expert on it, but you learn a lot. As Yogi Berra said, you can learn a lot just by looking.
I was amazed, Arthur.
You can look and see a lot just by looking.
Yogi should have run for president. I was amazed at how much I didn't know. I knew the academics, I knew the intellectual stuff, but I didn't know how it would work in real life. And going to these houses, seeing what people have tried to do and failed, or tried to do and succeed, seeing people doing landscaping on their property that impacts their neighbor and does discharge water onto it with the best of intentions, but still that's what's happening. Seeing people who are having water come onto their property and they don't know where the heck it's coming from. Seeing natural flows of water that probably weren't caused by anybody, but due to erosion from the amount of water that we're all generating. We're starting to get a picture of how complicated this is going to be. It was a delightful experience. So let's talk about what's next. We have to pull together the local villages. So that's like an important item. We're going to be helping Baylands with a draft report. I think our primary job will be to make sure that it is accessible by residents and the council and not too engineering. And it's presented in English. And examples are given of what they're talking about. That always helps me, including, so we're going to help them with that. And when it's ready for prime time for a public viewing, we'll present it to the residents for additional comment. And we hope that'll be in September. That's the plan, but July and August are not the best months to be trying to pull something together and get everybody to do it, but that's the goal. Then after the residents have had their say and we've thought through what they asked or added or suggested, we would then prepare a final report for presentation to the council and the town and the residents, and then talk it through at a public meeting. So figure that's going to be October, November, December. I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to be December. I just don't know. I would hope it could be done in October. I would hope it would just take a month and we're ready to go. But I don't know. This is a much more complicated report than the others I've worked on. And there's so many variables here. And there's so many different interests that the community has, and we want to address all of them one way or another. So that'll happen. And after that, the council have to decide, after we've made a presentation, that they want to go forward and how they want to go forward. And I don't know if you do planning and then budgeting and then decide what you could afford, but I'm sure Michael has some views about that'll guide us. But so there'll be a planning process, and then if a plan is adopted by the council, then there'll have to be an implementation process. And so that's the future I see for all of next year, given the pace things move in reality. And then there'll have to be contracting and oversight and work. And it'll be green infrastructure, gray infrastructure, education of people, hooking people up with funding sources or seeking the funding for them. And so I see this as probably about a 2-year process going forward. So that's my report. I make a recommendation that you extend the committee, the task force for a year, and all four of us want to stay on the task force. This
Well,
is the
thank you.
fun part for us.
Well, sounds fun. Thank you for all your work and for the recent community meeting with Bayland. In terms of the recommendation, I guess that would be taken up in July, or to extend.
To extend the
It would be
committee.
the next
Right,
council would
right,
vote on that.
right.
I'd have you all back, but this is my last council meeting, but tremendous work, tremendous. And just, it's pivotal, tremendous. Thank you. A huge thank you to all of you. And yes, that'll be for the next council. Yes,
Right.
Jeff, do you have a question?
Well, I just want to mark in the entire committee, you're amazing, and thank you. I was going to say, I just, without having a crystal ball, nor would I punt the question over to you to try and you all have a crystal ball, but I'll be very curious about what comes out of this. You know, are there going to be any, you know, large scale or potential for infrastructure versus, you know, more piecemeal policy or engagement with the county in terms of how they could facilitate certain hookups and other things where we've seen specific examples with particular developers where it was connecting, you know, that sort of thing. It'll just be, I think, important. And we haven't even talked about what the upzoning could potentially mean, you know, on this, but I know the part of that is, of course, the county, and you all know when you've applied to certain things for the state, we're not really looked at as a place where, you know, they want to provide funding to us. And so, again, I think there's that whole idea of the smart goals of ideally, you know, that there'll be some things that come out of this that we'll be able to do because, you know, infrastructure projects can really just break, you know, the reserves that we have. So hopefully whatever comes out of this, you know, that won't, you know, the data will show what we need, but I'm hoping it'll be things that are going to be more leverage and working with the county to help us as we go forward, if that makes sense.
May I respond? Jeff, may I respond?
Of course, yes, go ahead.
First of all, where did you get those red shoes?
Oh, yeah, they're spiffy.
These are my Billy Goat shoes. I use them at Old Rag. I got them at REI.
I love those shoes. All right, the response is all three. There will be infrastructure. My guess would be there'll be infrastructure recommendations, the gray and green, right? Gray is cement, green is planting, right? So there'll be alternatives. Let's say that the sewer pipes need to be replaced, but we can't get them replaced, or it'll take years to get them replaced. One option might be what's called the tree box. You can build and you can go to, there's a shopping center in on 29 out west. I can't remember where it is, but where they've done that. And they are ditches that are about, 4 or 5 feet wide, a few feet deep, full of sand, dirt, and plants. And the water, and they have an entry point at the top end of their hill and an exit point at the bottom end of their hill. And they can be anywhere from 15 to 40 feet long, probably more like 15 in our neighborhood. And you plant them and you put a tree in them. And trees are the best drinkers of water, and there's other plants that drink water. Now, it doesn't absorb all the water, but what it does is it slows the water going downhill so the pipes can actually manage the water. So that, I love to talk about tree boxes. I just think it's fantastic, but fantastically interesting. But we will come up with alternatives on different levels of investment and prioritizing them and doing cost benefit analysis of all of them. In cost benefit analysis, the benefit is the number of people it impacts over time, because we're looking at 2050 as how far out we want this to work. Now, in terms of funding, there are multiple funding sources. You're right, we had a problem with the state, but you know what? The real problem was the state didn't get the money they thought. So, and their excuse for not ranking us made no sense whatsoever. All right, it was just wrong, but that happens. That's just the way government works once in a while. But there are many sources. There's borrowing, there's bonds, there's taxation. There's a million ways to do it, or not a million, but there's 4 or 5 different ways of doing it. And you all will have to analyze which one fits. That'll be your job. We'll tell you the cost benefit analysis and the pricing and who to go to and what their criteria are right now. But after that, it's up to the council. I think that the one thing is for certain, no, in my mind is for certain. I think I have the support of the task force, but we haven't had a public meeting to discuss this. But we feel that given the fact that construction is ongoing and we're still talking about not having a stormwater code, and the house next door to me is for sale, going to be for sale, and the house two houses down the block is for sale. And I saw another house for sale, and I think there's going to be another one on Cummings. The builders aren't going to wait for us. All right, they're going to, if anything, they're going to rush to get past us. So what we're probably going to do, and Balin is going to help do the bullets, is give you a set of bullets for an interim stormwater management ordinance pending integration with the rest of the code and any work that people want to do on rewriting the code. But at least you'll have some tools. And I think the tools are going to look something like this. That at least it's where my head's at. We're going to basically adopt the county's ordinance with regards to new construction not being able to discharge additional water onto public or private property. They're going to have to prove it with their engineer. They're going to have to pay for that. And they actually should pay for our engineer to review it, but we'll get to that. That will include any new construction that's non-porous. So it wouldn't be just a house, it would be a patio. It would be a driveway. And these rules would apply to all those things because that's where the problems are. And then I think that's most of it, really just controlling the discharge. And if they can, and then they would have to warranty it, because if they fail, somebody has to be accountable. And they're the only ones who should be accountable if they fail to comply. But all these things will be presented to you in a package that maybe Ron will want to rewrite, maybe you want Ron to rewrite, or we'll write in more detail, or we can get somebody to do it. It probably would be somebody like Jakubiak. I don't think it's an engineer thing. I think it's a residential construction thing, and community policy thing. So we'll figure all that out. Maybe we'll have some recommendations there too.
We will figure it out. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm sorry, Nick. I see your Nick Mitchell, a recruit, the latest recruit to the task force. I see your hand has been up for a long time, and my apologies. Did you have something to add to the report or comment? I know you've been waiting. Sorry.
Thanks, Katie. No worries. And this discussion is right on line. I just wanted to add to what Mark said in the process, just a little behind the scenes, that we had to reach out to each and every one of those individual sites that let us come on to the property. So all the homeowners across VMA, just want to say thank you for letting us come on. There were 1 or 2 that were, okay, not really sure what the value is to me and maybe not having access to the property. But on the whole, everyone across the village was very engaged in letting the folks come on as part of that survey. And I think that's a really good thing. I learned from the process that some of the highest properties in the village, if there's been some erosion or if there have been trees that have left their property or other aspects where water that comes from their area then can create challenges for other residences, it was really important to do a thorough survey. And Balin presented that. We made those contacts, and a lot of folks across the village were open to having people come on. They were skeptical. Oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to measure? But we had great engagement in that process. And I just wanted to thank all the folks across the village that participated in that part of the study before we got to the first outcome. So thanks for everybody that allowed us to come on and do that.
Great, that's terrific to hear. Well, it takes a village, so it's going to take a village to figure this out, and we really appreciate you 4 villagers for your time.
Katie, I promise this will be very
Oh,
quick,
yeah.
but I just want to say, we're really just, I know we all, thinking back to the times where Doug and Hiromi were here and what they faced and some of the challenges, and Mark, what you shared, and Nick, I think you alluded to, was with new construction and just, things are really dynamic and changing, and we have certain code on the books, and then it's like a constant whack-a-mole of where we're trying to catch up. So again, I think the work is so important, and while some of this study around the infrastructure may take a couple of years, I think the code piece is going to be really important, for us to continue to review, and hopefully we won't be in a constant process of catching up where some of our fellow neighbors and friends are experiencing something which could be very stressful because these things are just changing so rapidly. So I just want to point that out, that some of this stuff is a constant review, and it's not 2 years off. It could be literally within the first quarter of the new council coming in.
Right. That's Jeff. That's why we want to give you an interim code that will spotlight these issues and allow you to learn where efforts we've made aren't working as well as we hoped in real time. And that way you can address these where things don't work. If we can spotlight it very clearly and we see something that isn't adequate, then we can present a simple fix to the council to consider. That's our hope. We want to make this easier for you. It's hard.
It is. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, Stormwater and Groundwater Task Force. So I'm going to move on to the next committee, ethics. I think I saw George. George is on. George McAleese. Thanks for waiting. Is George off mute? Let me see.
Yep.
Hi,
Everyone hear me?
George. Yes. Thank you.
So I can be pretty quick for ethics. We had 5 meetings this year, updating our training materials, updating some SOP content, working closely with Michael as we are had a very well-attended ethics training this year that we're very happy with, and we are going to add for next year, adding a short kind of mini training to the volunteer onboarding that happens at the beginning of the year. That was something that there had been some interest in, and so developing and updating our materials to make sure that those can all be incorporated. Biggest takeaway across ours was that there were no ethics complaints filed this year, so we didn't have any of the complaint process to work through. So we were able to kind of use our time to continue updating some of the framework support materials and continue to press forward. So that is our update from the ethics committee. I will say all of our detailed meeting minutes and everything are up on the ethics page. So if anyone would like to review from any of the meetings that we had this year, those are all up on the ethics page.
And it was a pleasure to be the liaison, George. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much to our council liaisons this year. I know we were very difficult. Caused you a great deal of stress.
And Susan was your liaison, co-liaison.
Lori was a great chair. She's the outgoing chair. She and her colleagues, George and Alex, ran a tight ship. It was great.
Susan, were you trying to talk? Sorry.
No, it's fine. I just was thanking George. Very kind of him to recognize.
Yes,
and they're a great committee, as are they all. But I particularly enjoy working with this group because they're very, very dedicated.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to Lori, Alex, and George. And thanks, George. Thanks for waiting. And task force, I don't see anyone from anti-Semitism. I guess that will be up to the next council to decide whether to extend that task force. So I am going to move on to, last but not least, the election committee. Thank you very much for waiting. I think I see Marty. She's off mute. Okay.
And Elizabeth.
And Elizabeth. Okay, are both from the committee. Okay, great. Marty, hi. Are you ready to do your report?
We're ready to rock and roll. And Katie, I want to start by thanking you for all your service on the council. You've been a delight to work with. Thank you for being our liaison last year and for being supportive to really good best practices when it comes to elections. I'd like to thank our liaison this year, Arthur. You were helpful again. Thank you as always. And I also want to say to Mark Schaefer and everybody on the Water Task Force, you guys are terrific. Thank you so much. I was one of the 20 people at that briefing on June 18th, and I thought it was just terrific. It was superb, informative. Like you say, you learn a lot if you listen. And you guys are just so on the right track, and it's so needed. So a special thank you personally from me, and I know many other residents too, for all your work on the water issues. Turning now to elections. Elections are like trains, like you're running a train. You got all these stations you need to be at. You need to have a lot of moving parts. You got to have everything working at the right speed and get everything there at the right time and not miss a stop or a schedule. It's really a complex process. And this year, for the second year in a row, we had an uncontested election. And we'll be talking about that a little bit in a moment. But this year's election generally went well. You'll see we have a detailed report. It starts on page 9 of the packet for tonight's meeting. And it goes through all the different components, candidates. And congratulations to both Andrew and Alexa. Thank you both for running and serving. The voter roll verification process, we did it ourselves this year and really met the requirements that are in that voter roll verification section of the regulations. And you can see our report there. I'm not going to read all the details, but we recommend next year that we do what we did last year, which is actually hire a contractor to help with that process. It's very labor intensive, and there's a short time to do it. It's basically you got to do it by March, because by April you got to give the voter roll to the contractor to start preparing ballots. So it's a tight timeline, big job, and certainly makes sense to hire a contractor to do that. We have the process down, but for example, we had to send notification letters to more than 80 people, and we'd like to thank the staff for their administrative support work and getting the mailings out and all of that. It's a very important process in the sense that it's about voting rights, protecting voting rights. You don't ever want to remove somebody wrongly. And I'm pleased to report that we were able to remove about 60 people from the voting roll who had died or moved away, so we cleaned it up. And not a single person filed an appeal to say that we'd made a wrong decision. So I think our process here was really quite effective in making sure we have an accurate voter roll. And with mail vote elections, you have to have an accurate voter roll because everybody on that list gets a ballot. So these are live ballots going out to people. And you want to protect voting rights, but at the same time, you need to, under state law, not send ballots to people who are not actually residents. So it's a big job. And I think we did a good job of it this year, but it was very labor intensive. We had the forum, which I thought went really well. Congrats to our forum moderators, Elizabeth and Naomi. And the forum discussion we thought was so interesting that we actually have included in our report. Section 3 is just some of the great ideas that came out of that forum. So that's a really nice thing to read. There were some issues with the ballots. The village manager had to repeatedly follow up to get Electic to follow the instructions about correcting the ballot materials, but they finally did. And they mailed them to the village on time. We had early ballot requests, we had replacement ballot requests, all that's in the regs, and it went like clockwork. Election day, May 6th, we want to thank the staff and the Community Engagement Committee for a very successful celebration on the sidewalk. 41% of the village voters this year used the election drop box on May 6th. So vote counting went smoothly, although we do have one recommendation about how to improve that next year. And public information, of course, a lot of our work is getting the election notices on schedule throughout the cycle, having the timely, informative articles for people, providing the election reports to really make the process transparent. We made sure that all the election procedures are now public, which they were last year, they are again this year. We held 9 open public committee meetings and had some really interesting resident comments at some of them. And again, our meeting minutes and recordings are posted. We have 8 committee recommendations. I'm not going to go through them tonight. They're pretty self-explanatory, and we'll be working with the new council next year, next year's committee. I'm sure we'll be following up with the council on all 8 of those. Obviously, if you have any questions about them, feel free to let us know. We're serving through June 30th, and we're available to answer questions. Then you'll see that one of the recommendations we have is number 7, is it became very clear last year in this that we really need what we call a practical instruction manual. We have the election regs, and they're generally pretty good now. Those are the legal requirements, but they don't say how to do these things, to say how you do, in fact, do the nitty-gritty work, the administrative work of verifying a voter roll, or doing the ballot postal tracking, or how you handle, just the administrative side of this. And we do have some residents now who have the real expertise, and we think it would make a great deal of sense to provide short-term contractor assistance to talk to those election experts and put together the administrative side of the manual, which just says how to do this. And, the rules, the regulations say you must do X, Y, Z, and the administrative manual is all in our heads now, but it's not written down anywhere. And so that would be, I think, a real benefit for future committee members, for council members, for future staff, to have that administrative companion, if you will, the nitty-gritty how-tos on postal tracking and other stuff. So that's one interesting recommendation. And you can read through the others. The notes from the election forum, section 3, are really positive. It was fascinating to see the ideas that came up by the candidates and by residents in response to the forum questions. And some of them have involved the stormwater work too. So take a look at those. That's section 3 of our report. And section 4, the final section of our report, is a proposal. We've been knee deep in sort of, the sort of civic involvement issues involved in running elections successfully. And we had some, I think, very good ideas for how the council could take action early next year before the election cycle starts to really up our game as a community in terms of involvement in local issues, whether it's stormwater or election management, or just to get people sort of like up to speed and willing to step up and contribute. And so we really commend that to your attention. And I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth now to talk about our proposal. There are 3 main parts in it, and we hope that the new council in July will take a really good, fast look at that and put some of those in place before the election cycle starts. So Elizabeth, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Marty. So I too would like to give my thanks to the council for the opportunity to serve on the election committee, to Katie for her leadership, to Art and Jeff, who were liaisons to the committee, and following all of our, all of the lengthy work and discussions. It was informative for me. It was a learning experience. It was a great opportunity to meet residents and to collaborate with a really hardworking, experienced, and committed team. And most importantly, to participate in democracy and action at the grassroots level of what matters most, which is the neighborhood we live in. As Marty said, we had an uncontested election for the 2nd year in a row and a relatively low voter turnout of 28.5%. So after this, we were discussing the results and asking the question, what more could be done to enhance civic participation in the election process? Not only running for office, but voting, serving on committees, getting involved in local government. What's missing? Because we sent countless notifications to, reminder type notifications and opportunities to jump in, et cetera, to serve, but didn't seem to have an effect. And of course, there were lots of external reasons we understand going on this year that may have had an impact on that decision as well. basically the election committee is committed to improving the process and the results. And that's why we're submitting this proposal to the council. But we need more ammunition. And so what we have done here is to develop a proposal for measures that could be taken to enhance community participation in the council, committees, and in local government in general. And this consists of 3 parts. The first part would provide, the first 2 would provide, let's say, tools that the election committee could actually use to, in the invitation package that goes out to the community, inviting residents to run for office. The first one would be is in the packet called a sample document. It's entitled, "What Does Your Council Do?" This addresses a need to inform potential candidates and residents in general about what is involved in serving on the council. It covers duties and responsibilities of the council so that residents have a better idea of the expectations, the workload, time commitments, and skills that might be useful for serving on the council. The sample document is a template, basically, with 16 duties and responsibilities, which are the basic building blocks or elements of governing organizations. And they were drawn from many sources and also from our own understanding of what does our council do, since we haven't found a document that says that precisely. And how would this be used? You're probably asking. The idea is it could be a standing document that might be posted on the village website in an area like About Us, about the organization. And it would also be used by the election committee with the to be submitted with the invitation to run for the council office. The second element is to develop an annual impact report, is what we're calling it. Now, we understand Michael's working on an annual report, and a substantive annual report is probably also an excellent idea and would be very much appreciated. But what we had in mind here was a PR document that's different than a comprehensive annual report. This might be a one-page flyer or a fold-out brochure that highlights key priorities and outcomes, activities and/or events in the preceding fiscal year, and shows graphically how the budget was spent to implement the work plan, so that in a very short view, someone could get the idea of, how have the resources been allocated in this community, and already have a much clearer idea of what's going on. This could also be posted on the VMA website for public information in that same About VMA section. And it would be distributed by the election committee with the invitation to run for council office. This would complement the list of duties that I just discussed as important background information, so any potential candidates can easily and quickly get the picture of VMA business. The third element in the proposal is organizing a VMA annual meeting with an open forum. Now, you're probably going to say, we already have an annual meeting, that it's the one that took place in the month of May. What we're proposing would be a slight change of format and timing in order to increase participation in setting priorities for the budget. This would give residents a chance to weigh in on budget priorities for the new fiscal year before they're already wrapped up, sealed, and ready for adoption at that May meeting, as I believe was the case last month. This would need to be scheduled before the priorities are set and ready for adoption or vote by the council, most likely at the prior meeting where you're actually having a discussion on the budget. The idea, though, would be that it may be a slightly more formal presentation as an introduction to your budget to residents, and then an open forum where they could actually give feedback on their reactions to those proposals or propose something new that you may not know about that might be a good idea. So the way it works is would give you much more feedback, or potentially the opportunity for, because, I can't guarantee that, but it seems like such an open forum attached to your budget meeting would be an inclusive, an open invitation to people to participate in such important decisions as deciding where the money is going to go for the next fiscal year. We, as Marty's already said, this is a forward-looking proposal. We understand no decisions are made on you're ending your year now, but we'd like to start up the discussion or put this on your agenda early in the year, if not in the July meeting, because the first two documents would need to be prepared and ready at the beginning of the election cycle for the next go around. And just to close, I would like to say that the purpose of this proposal is really, it's all about accountability. It's about transparency. It's about public information and tools regarding key processes, functions, and outcomes in running local government, and about increasing public awareness of and interest in all of the above. Our expectation and our hope is that a public or community that is more informed may be more likely to participate in all aspects of local government, from running for council to voting to serving on committees and task forces or other volunteer work. And I'd like to thank you very much for your consideration and the opportunity to do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Marty. This election committee, no doubt dedicated to democracy. And yes, transparency. Thank you for your hard work, the proposal, the recommendations, including the what does your council do?
Yeah, I thought that was a good idea. Not just a job description, but like, what's it like?
It's
What do
very
we do
thorough.
here?
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I think that some of the committees and committee members do more work and put in more hours than we do on the council. Some of the committee work is more involved.
And I wanted to thank, as the most recent candidate at this table here, I wanted to thank the election committee as well. I always enjoy the forums, I enjoy the vote counting, and I'm never worried that there's some sort of inaccuracy or malfeasance, because I know you guys run a tight ship and you do a great job, whether it's the voter roll or just the process itself. So thank you very much for providing that kind of certainty during this latest election season.
Just a quick comment. First of all, bravo. That's really some incredible readout report set of recommendations, and I'm sure the new council will take up those. A couple just quick hits. First, I just want to thank you. You've inspired me. So Michael, now you know for the next report, which will include the full annual, we're going to have all the full annual accounting of the books for the fiscal year. We are going to put together, I'll put it together, a pie chart. We have to do graphics, right? Not just the, so we're going to get some graphics for you with colors. I hope that works.
And garbage will dominate.
I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is.
I thought
this
he
is
was talking about the Venn
looking at these, financial reports. We have to bring in some excitement. So we will do that.
I love it.
The other thing I just want to put out there, which I think is an important point. So I really appreciate the idea of engagement, the fact that, turnout was a bit low, and also, we haven't had contested elections. And I know I've had discussions with other council members and even beyond this council position, but other boards I'm on. And in general, turnout is low. And folks aren't quite understanding if this is a structural thing. Are we looking at, a COVID sort of permanent thing or whatever it might be, but just putting out there that this is not a trend simply VMA. I mean, it's all over. It's very difficult to get people to turn out and to show up. And so it's just something to keep in mind. But one thing I did want to offer that I think would be interesting, I don't think we put it this year, but the annual survey, I think it'd be good to just put a question, something around running or whatever, and what are the barriers? I know we collected, but I think it's time. And, there are just things. So anyway, I just put that out there because, for example, last thing, and then I'll turn over is, for the budgeting, the last 2 years, we've had an open forum for all residents to come and participate. And I believe that we have had the maximum turnout this year of 2 people. Last year, now, I'm not trying to say, this is not trying to be facetious because whoever shows up is incredibly engaged and really creates value in that. But just saying that we have attempted to create these opportunities and, and we publicize and so I think it's a little bit more than informational. I think that there's something to look deeper, and we'll do that question on the survey again, Kissing.
When there's no drama, there's less participation, but I feel like there's plenty of drama coming our way with the school boundary, with, the water task force, just kind of people I think have skin in the game here and will hopefully step up and become involved because this impacts everyone. So maybe it's not drama, but just engagement that we're seeking. And this the booklet or whatever we're putting together, maybe there's some cartoons to make it entertaining. What does the council do to a cartoon of Jeff and
like
Arthur?
the little booklets we have, the little council meeting booklets and that.
Anyway,
Yeah.
all right, sorry.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Susan, did you have any questions or comments about the committee reports or maybe she's not in a place to. I was just going once. Okay, well, yes, so your next council will take that under advisement to consider for next year's election committee. So thank you. Thank you again to all of the committees and task forces. Well done. And we're going to move on to the FY25 budget adjustments. This is on page 18, is that right?
Correct. And I want to actually give Jeff an opportunity to give his treasurer's report.
Oh, okay.
Which was included today into the packet.
Okay.
As an attachment.
Do you want to do that
I
now or?
would be delighted to,
Okay.
and I will make it short, but
That's fine.
just a couple points. First, again, first glance, we're in really outstanding shape. So if you just look at the line items on the top of the report, our net income at this point for the year is we're 600,000 over what we had budgeted. That is quite, amazing for a small municipality. However, I do just want to point out that 540,000 of that is ARPA. So, if you take that and you minus that, you're looking at roughly about 80,000, which is still normatively, when you're over by almost 100,000, that's 10%, surplus, which is great, of about $1 million. Now, I do want to point out just one other thing. We'll get to this next month when we have the full annual figures. The income tax where we are now, we're at about 691,000 for the year, and we budgeted 750. So we're at about that. We may come a bit under, but the reason why we're most likely, if we just look at our 2 biggest sources of income or revenue, it's going to be income and interest. And that makes up roughly about 90%. And I'm sharing that because, again, this year, our income is probably going to dip a little bit. We may fall under, but where we're going to make up for that is our interest. The interest income is about 40% more just in this month alone, with 1 month left. So we budgeted 200,000, we're about 276,000. So we're over 40%. I'm sharing all this because I've said it before. We've had sweeteners. I think with the interest, we've been fortunate, but it's very possible that in the couple of years ahead, we may end up a little bit in the red when it comes to income versus expenses. But we have really an incredible, reserve. But that's why when Mark and the committee had shared, their report, the issue is that there may be some infrastructure coming out that unless we look and really, and Arthur gets all the credit. I mean, he's the guru and Yoda of this, where he's kept us in this good standing. But, if you're not careful, you have a couple infrastructure projects and you can really, if you're not managing it wisely, you could get back down to where we were a number of years ago, where you didn't have much of a reserve at all.
biggest checks I've written or I've signed was for street paving. I know street paving was the biggest one. Hundreds of thousands easily go out to do that.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have the Brookville sidewalk. There's another major one.
So, anyway,
Good.
all is good.
Okay.
And now we can do a budget
Okay,
adjustment.
now
so
we
now
do
it's
the
just- sorry.
adjustment.
Page 18,
Okay.
we allocated enough money, we just didn't put them quite in the right budget categories.
All right, that's okay.
So I think there was 5 that were over that I wanted to call your attention to.
Mhm.
Printing and mailing, our IT budget, I did have to buy a new computer ahead of schedule. Street cleanings, the price has gone up. We did adjust the budget for that next year. The tree planting initiative, we've continued to plant more and more trees every year.
So the fact that we're over so much, how many trees have we planted this year? Do you know exactly?
Yeah, this year in the fall, we planted, I think it was almost 50 trees once you included the
Yeah.
private trees as well as the right of way trees. I'm expecting less trees this next year. So maybe finally it'll come back down a little bit.
No, I don't want it to come down.
Well,
I
of
want to
course,
keep
of course.
planting.
You know,
This is-
the street trees at least are, those are, every spot is pretty much filled. What we're doing is replacing the trees that fall down.
Right.
So I know this
And
one's.
they age, they get old.
Yeah.
And we
Yep.
have to
So
do
there's
it.
it's an
constant.
ongoing effort. And the trees we're planting now will, be the ones that are providing the shade and the cooling effects and the stormwater retention, all the benefits, in 20 years from now. So
That's right. So all those private trees have these long-term effects that go way beyond just trees.
yeah, we also are encouraging people to maintain their trees because a couple years ago we lost a good portion of the new trees. New trees don't all make it, but we want to make sure people are watering their tree. So we sent out a reminder this week because it was super hot, just to remind people you should be watering your tree at least once a week, and when it's this hot, probably twice. So
Okay.
just a reminder for that. So trees, and then the last one was the elections. We've included, some mailing categories. We're also doing ballot tracking, and that contract I am keeping it right under $10,000 with Electech. So the budget's $10,000, but we spent $11,971. So.
Okay.
And then there's where we have extra money and can move it in there. So I just picked randomly where there was enough money to cover each of those categories. So all we need is a vote here up and down, unless there's any questions.
I don't have any questions. Do you all have any
No,
questions?
no. I think we need to, do we have to just say this as a budget resolution?
Do you just make a motion to approve? the
Motion, yeah.
Budget, just make okay, I'll make the motion.
Okay.
To, it's one of my last, I'll make a motion to approve the FY25 budget adjustments. Is there a second?
I will second that.
I'll second.
Oh,
okay.
Susan said.
Give it to Susan.
Susan
Susan, okay.
seconded.
Susan, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great.
No, okay.
Susan said aye. All right. No opposed.
Good.
Great. Thank you. All right.
We are now in compliance.
Yeah, moving on. Mr. Ron, update on county and state housing initiatives. Thank you so much for waiting, Ron.
Sure. Yeah, so we're going to talk about ZTA 2502. That's the Workforce Housing Bill. The County Planning, Housing and Parks Committee held a work session 3 days ago. The committees voted to send their recommendations on to the county council for action on the ZTA. Some thought it might have been more than one work session given the number of issues that have been raised, but that's not the case. So that there is a chance that the county council could approve this ZTA before their August recess. There is 2 pieces of good news. Corner lots will not be eligible for development under that ZTA, and the planning board site plan approval process remains in place. So someone that wants to develop a workforce housing building, they've got to go through site plan approval with the planning board. Can't just go to DPS and get a permit. Issues of concern that you've talked about before and that Michelle Rosenfeld has shared with us. The joinder of lots. So under ZTA, as currently written, as you know, lots that abut certain corridors can be developed. And there was a question whether you could chain lots into neighborhoods and develop those. And the answer is yes, under the current ZTA. So there was a push to get that changed. It's not been changed as of now. Councilmember Friedman did propose a limit of 3 in a chain and also addressed and raised questions about what types of resulting subdivisions would be permissible, but that's going to be addressed by a separate ZTA in the future. So as the ZTA is currently proposed, there's chaining is possible and currently no limit. Another big issue is parking, and I sent an email out today on that. Notably, in Legislative Council's memo, it's noted that R60 lots being rather small, it might be difficult to actually develop one of those for a triplex, let's say, especially given the parking requirements. So the ZTA doesn't change the current parking requirements for multi-unit living. And as an example, under current law and under the ZTA, if you build a triplex that has 3 separate units inside, and let's say each unit is a 3-bedroom apartment, the parking requirements for that triplex would be 6 parking spaces if it's not workforce housing. If there's 1 workforce housing unit in there, your parking requirements are 5. So you can imagine how, the amount of paving that would be required to create 5 parking spaces is quite a lot. So the planning board did recommend that, the planning board staff recommended that the planning board be able to waive those parking requirements, and that's going to be part of the recommendation as well, but the waiver can only happen under certain circumstances, and that's included in those circumstances are that you're within 1 mile of a transit station. So yeah, I mean, that's my update on the county ZTA. We've already apprised you of our success at the state level, getting section 2509 of the land use article amended to clarify that we do have the ability to impose restrictions on buildings, including up to 4 units. And so given that, the village retains its ability to regulate workforce housing units up to 4-unit buildings. So in the future, you're going to have to take a look at your building code and make sure everything's how it should be, given the potential impacts from the incoming density. And that is my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for being on our agenda all year to talk about this topic. We've come full circle. It's been a whole year that we've been talking about this. Any of you have questions for Ron?
I think just as a placeholder, because this will be something under the new council, but Ron, I apologize if I've lost. So what you're sharing right now are ZTAs which are forthcoming. They're not voted on, they're not settled. So this is something we'll continue to look at. Is that the?
Yes, but the workforce housing ZTA, it looks like it could be approved in a matter of months.
Okay.
And this is for the corridors which includes Connecticut Avenue and East West Highway, correct?
Correct, yes.
But now corner lots are not included in that.
That's right. Yeah, and as we've noted before, the village is currently not impacted, but the scope of the eligible properties could always expand in the future.
Do we know what percentage of those lots on those 2 corridors are corner lots? I feel like there's probably a decent amount of lots that got eliminated from this.
Yes, and attached to the memo that Legislative Council LivWho submitted, there's a map showing all the corner lots. And Michael, I just sent you that just a few hours ago. So if you're interested, you can pull that map up. I've not counted the number of lots, but you can see them on that map.
I can prepare a little note to send out to everyone about this as well, especially because it's not clear how fast they're moving exactly. But we definitely want to keep everyone informed of what's going on. And do we have a sense on what's happening with the neighboring municipalities that are impacted directly? What's their stance?
No, except that Michelle Rosenfeld's going to be scheduling a conference call for the interested municipalities to talk about next steps.
Okay. Good. And we're still, just so everyone is aware, we're still contracting with Michelle Rosenfeld. Even though we're not directly impacted, we're still, chipping in and paying for a share of her time. And she couldn't be here tonight, or otherwise she would be delivering this. But thanks, Ron, for stepping in.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It looks like Marty has her hand up. I think,
You want to save it for resident comments?
yeah, I still save that from resident comments.
I have a quick question for Ron before he leaves.
Is he sticking
about
around?
this.
Dropping off?
Do I get to leave? That would be awesome.
Well, I'd like to talk to you before you leave. I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Can I go ahead, Katie?
Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
Okay, first, I understand it, and tell me if I'm correct, that although the current corridors don't include Brookville Road, that could be a future ZTA. So we're not free and clear on this. We're just not temporarily in the firing line. Is that
Sure.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely right. Yeah,
Okay.
the county council could always in the future expand the scope of permissible properties.
I also have an answer for you about the number of corner lots, because I looked it up. And if the corner lots are excluded from this rezoning under ZTA 2502, that's about 25% of the lots. So that is actually, excluding the corner lots, does in fact significantly limit the extent to which lots can be built up by developers. Now, my question for you is completely different. As the election committee was reviewing all the work this year, one of the issues that came up was the timeliness of notifying residents about public comment periods. For example, we have a 30-day public comment period on the election regs every year. And we could not find where in the Administrative Procedures Act there is any requirement that says that a municipality has to let residents know, about a public comment period, like in the first 3 days of the 30-day period. Are you aware what that requirement might be? There probably is one. I just couldn't find it. Do you know? You don't need to answer now, but I'd like to know.
Are you talking about the county ZTA?
No. This is just completely different. This is completely different. This came out of the election work, where you have the village council, proposes to do something, and there's a 30-day public comment period here in Martin Petitions.
Oh yeah, that's in the charter.
Okay, what's the requirement for public notice of that 30-day comment period? How fast do people have to be informed that there is a comment period?
I don't think the charter specifies that.
No, our charter doesn't.
Just that we can't take action until 30 days after introduction. So that implies that once something is introduced, the public becomes aware of it, either through agenda, meeting minutes, constant contact blast, or what have you.
Marty, I think we're gonna get back on schedule here with our agenda.
Okay, well, Ron, if there's something in the County or State Administrative Procedures Act that says public notice requirements, I'd appreciate it if you could get back to us. Thank you for looking it up. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And Ron, before you drop off, because he's going to drop off, right? I wanted to personally thank you for being our legal eagle. This is my last meeting tonight. You have been incredibly helpful and patient with me since day one of my council terms, and I am appreciative of your calm demeanor, tact, and knack for turning legalese into layman's terms for me. And so I'm just very thankful for your work, and I just wanted to catch you before you drop off.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I've enjoyed working with you and your mother too. And I know your mother's very proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
What job you've done here for the village.
Thank you so much, Ron. All right. Well, thanks for your time tonight.
Good night, everybody.
All right. So let's move on to, okay.
Curve extension.
Curve extensions, bump out projects for Shepherd Street and Cummings Lane. I would like to note that, I don't know if you've all caught up on your emails or I know it's a lot of moving parts, but all of us received, and the village staff received emails earlier today from residents, Spence and Renata Patterson. I think I saw Renata. I don't know if that's the same Renata on here, of Cummings, and Jean Sperling of Shepherd concerning this project. So they offered their feedback and suggestions. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at that, but so you want to lead on this? Or,
Introduce it for a moment?
Yes,
Is
go
that
ahead.
Going back to the walkability committee
Mhm.
and the engineering company that was hired to support them the traffic, what was the traffic
Group.
traffic group. These suggestions just didn't pop up. They were the result of the evaluation of through traffic, not traffic that originates within the village, but comes from out of the village, passes through and continues on its way. And typically that kind of traffic is faster, speedier than people who come out of their driveway, drive down to the corner and proceed. And two streets, Cummings and Shepherd, were the most highly trafficked and that had the highest speeds. And the engineers thought they were way too much traffic and way too fast for the capacity of the streets. And it was suggested that these kinds of curb extensions is one way of dealing with it. And the object is twofold. One is to deter people, make it inconvenient, as they say in the software world. The inconvenience is not a bug, it's a feature. And hoping to make it inconvenient for people to come around these and go down the streets would deter people from coming down. So it would cut down both the speed and the volume. So this was the origin of these ideas. So proceed.
That's great. And so all I did is took what that report was and this recommendation and dusted off. I have met with the engineer several times. We have been on site. We have observed traffic speeding down these streets, even with the speed bumps. And the council asked me to look at various traffic calming measures that have been talked about for a long time and bring them back. We have famously just installed 3 speed humps on Turner, and I know the council's received a lot of feedback about those. So that's the context for where these are coming from. We've finally gotten to the curb extensions, and the graphics on page 20 are from the same walkability study that was done years ago. That's the exactly same graphic there that I just pulled out of there and refreshed. I've also included some rationale from the engineer on why you put these curb extensions on the parking side. You end up losing 1 parking space for each of these. So I know, there's not a ton of parking, but there is a little bit more parking down towards the edge of the village there towards Rollingwood on both of these streets. But that's the rationale for why you put it on page 21. And I've also included some definitions and some examples on page 19. I think page 19, the picture to the left is kind of the example that we're going for. You see a parked car kind of right in front of it. You see a walkway behind it and some plantings.
Planting on it.
So these do help with stormwater when they're planted in them this way. And one comment the council received was on Shepherd Street. There's our sidewalks end right before this would exit out. So there is some, people that walk to the park. So those people already have to exit, if they're on the sidewalks, have to exit the sidewalks and go around any parked cars to get down to the park. So they're walking down the middle of the street at this point as well. It does have slow traffic calming, slowing effect. I hope it would serve as a deterrence for cut through traffic. The more features like this you put in, I guess that is the case. But it's a cute opportunity. You could do things. You could put a bench there. You could plant a tree. We can put a nice sign there. Welcome to the village. Those types of things. So it almost will work as a gateway or a back door into the village from Rollingwood. So that's the proposal before the council. And if we want to solicit feedback, that's one option. If the council feels strongly that they want to just move forward as is, then I can go ahead and do it. I have the contractor lined up, and their proposal starts on page 22. And you'll see the proposal and the cost. It's under $10,000, so we don't have to go out to bid or anything like that. Just a simple nod from the council, and I can schedule this one.
I'm nodding. We have 2 hands up.
We do, yeah. I wanted to acknowledge that. We have that's Renata and Yasmina in the room. She's on.
You want to do Yasmina first? You're in the room. You don't mind coming up?
To the, yeah. First of all, thank you, Michael, for pulling this together. I have been wanting to see follow-up on the walkability studies, so I'm really grateful for it. I live on Shepherd Street, so I would be immediately concerned by the curve out. That having been said, there are two issues that I want to bring to your attention. The first issue is one that you just addressed, which is they basically would take the place of a parked car. It's actually a really dangerous area for our street because when there are games in the park, we have a ton of parking. There's not enough parking on our street whenever there's a game in the park, which is every weekend, right? And cars double park while they're waiting for their kids to jump in. Other cars get nervous and try and go around them. And so, you know, and the dogs, it's a little hairy. So I would love for you to consider speaking to the engineer about a way for pedestrians to go through this bump out so that they don't have to go around it into the street, into a blind spot, but could actually walk through, you know, into the park area using this bump out. So that's my first concern in terms of safety for pedestrians. Second concern is when the walkability, and sorry, I'm just
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
You've been working with the engineer, but when the walkability group did the study 3-4 years ago, there wasn't a stormwater committee, and we didn't have the advantage of having an engineer actually working for the village at the same time. So I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't pass these plans by our stormwater engineer to say, hey, are we actually building these in the smartest way? Is this actually in a place where it would absorb water? You know, is it helping from a stormwater perspective? Or what could we do to enhance the features to make it, you know, useful from that perspective? Because other than that, I think it's a great gateway. It's nice in terms of sending a message. It kind of creates a feeling of a village and a private space that people would be coming through. But I think there are a few things that we could build on here to not miss the opportunity.
In fact, I was in your old city of Paris a few weeks ago and noted on some of the major boulevards, just these sorts of bump outs with trees, tree boxes, benches, all the things that were said. So they served like 3 separate functions at the same time. Traffic calming, trees with shade and water absorption, and a pleasant place to sit. And there's right along the major boulevards.
And
Could there
don't
be
need
a
to go-
pathway to walk?
That's
It's
the question.
lovely.
Well, that's
You
the
don't
question
need to
about
go
it.
as far as Paris to see this. And my hometown has, there's a whole street that to get to the station, I have to
Go like
do
this,
this
yeah.
little, it's a
Right.
zigzag to get there to deliberately slow traffic down. And the emergency vehicles get through, they have no problem.
No, both those
So
points, the pedestrian one, I did speak to this engineer about that. There are ways where you can actually run a sidewalk through the middle of it, which then has the counter, you know, disadvantage of, well, then you're not absorbing water if you're running a full sidewalk through it. So,
You can't do everything with one.
but you
little
can landscape it in such a way that people can step off the street if they're able-bodied, you know, to step off the street out of the way of a car or something like that. But yeah, so I looked at those options. The idea of running it by the stormwater engineer, the separate engineer, I mean, that's just an email. I can do that. That seems pretty easy. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think we have great examples of what's been done in DC. They've done a fabulous job on Oregon and what's the other street that leads to Oregon? Anyway, they just really good work in terms of capturing the.
I know the ones in Oregon. Yeah, they have a lot of stormwater capture in their
massive.
tree boxes. Yeah.
Really nicely done. That was
Yeah,
a
and it
long
changed
project.
everything.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge Renata had her hand up, and maybe we should just hear from her real quickly.
Hi, thank you. It's actually Renata Ann Spence. So
Hi,
okay.
everybody. Yeah, so Michael and the council, we definitely appreciate the focus on Cummings Lane in dealing with the speed and the volume. Just for the benefit of other residents, to kind of summarize, I think 2 important points from the email that I sent to the council today. We have maybe more speed bumps on Cummings than maybe any other street in the village. We certainly have a number. Those have, I think, worked pretty effectively to slow traffic. But I don't believe there's been a traffic study since those speed bumps were installed. The initial traffic study was either done during COVID or shortly thereafter. So I think, you know, as a resident on Cummings and somebody who cares about both volume and speed, it would be great to see how effective those speed bumps actually were. Another point is I'm a little concerned that the council is not considering potentially cheaper and easier solutions that might be more effective. Our neighbors across Connecticut Avenue, I believe that would be the town, have timed do not enter signs. So if you're coming down Rosemary towards Martin's Additions before 6 p.m., I think it's 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., you can't cross Connecticut and continue down Raymond. And that to me is an extremely effective way to deal with volume during peak times. I mean, we are a key cut through street for the district to get to Brookville Road and then Connecticut. And I think, you know, stopping some of the traffic from even coming down would be much more effective than building a curb extension. And hearing, frankly, that it is basically the same as a permanently parked car. If anybody has driven down Cummings lately, and I encourage you to do so around 8 a.m., we are on our third home construction in 3 years. There are more cars parked on Cummings than I have ever seen. And it is not cut down on volume. It has not dissuaded people from coming. It has not affected speed. The speed bumps do, but the parked cars do not. So I guess I would welcome a little bit more data to see what might be a more effective solution. And also if the council could answer whether or not you've looked at time do not enter signs in and out of the village.
Can I chime in? So great points. Those timed signs, I'm fascinated by them. I think they're fantastic. My question is, and I really do like them, and I don't know what kind of jurisdiction we have to do that off of a state road. And I don't know what kind of process that was for those folks. How do you feel? I mean, I guess the end justifies the means. You don't want that cut through traffic, but for you to get to your home during those hours would be kind of inconvenient as well, no? I mean, you'd have to kind of cut through another street. Would that's not a consideration for you? Or
It actually says on the signs, except local traffic.
Except traffic. So
except
if you
local
live
traffic.
there, you
So then, but does that happen? Except local traffic on the Raymond one?
There are several. If you look up and down East-West Highway between where Brookville Road exits and up to where it connects with Connecticut Avenue, you'll notice all those local side streets have that exact signage.
And I think again, I think also, if you look at elementary and
Spence, you're cutting up a little bit.
Is she back on?
All right, there we go. There are basically from Chevy Chase Elementary to Connecticut, there's a do not enter down Rosemary from Chevy Chase Elementary, and then a second do not enter at Raymond on the other side. There are frequently, I cut through there on my commute home sometimes, and there are frequently Montgomery County Police that just sit there and ticket people who go through the do not enter. So I think that gives a little bit more of an effective stick to try and deal with this problem than just building a curb extension.
And I
100%. And if I could just chime in quickly at that circle, I do the roundabout way sometimes. That takes a little longer where you have to go past the school and come around past Justice Roberts' house.
Yeah, I do as well.
Yeah, because I see the cops there sometimes, but I must say I have to go back because I don't remember seeing the local traffic excluded. And I would think that people would take advantage of it like you and I have, Spence. But anyway, I like the idea.
Well, we actually looked at that at one time, and I cannot remember why we didn't do it because there were a variety of legal restrictions around it. But
we should look into it.
Yeah, we have. So, but we could look at it again.
If we're misremembering the local access only on Rosemary, it 100% is further down coming from Wisconsin into the neighborhoods to cut across. Those definitely say local access only.
Yeah.
Absolutely on East-West Highway between Brookville and Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, it just would make it even, I mean, would just make it inconvenient for residents, but I think we should definitely look into that. I like the idea.
So I believe the agenda says taking a vote. Is that what the?
Well, we don't have to. That was
Yeah,
just
Okay.
well,
I
we
was
definitely
wondering
can
about
if we
that.
want to.
Well,
And some of
yeah.
these ideas are in addition to, they're not in spite of, you know.
I'll just come out and just say, I personally, I don't think we should vote, but I'll say right now, I will vote against this because I think I'm highly persuaded by what the residents have shared. And I do have questions, more data is needed, but I do have questions about, you know, we already have speed humps, and is this really going to slow traffic? Probably not. And really, at the end of the day, it sounds like it's going to create more of a burden on the people who live there than anything. And, you know, you think of delivery trucks and things like that. So
Yeah.
I think that we should really take these concerns into consideration, at least try and get a little bit more information, but
And I think
I'm not persuaded.
if we have the budget to do a study, it would be fascinating to me to see how the numbers have changed with all the speed humps on Cummings, for example. So I think
yeah.
there's no rush here. I think we could look at that as well, and the signs.
Well, I do want to just say one quick footnote. I do, because I appreciate, I know Arthur, I know Lori Mitchell, I know others who had been, you know, there's been a lot of time that went into this. So
Yes,
this is
yes.
not something to just flippantly say, oh, we're not going to do, because I know there's been a lot behind it, but I just want to say I'm persuaded by, you know, this is the last
Well,
day
and
of this
the
council, we should at
Second,
least
looking
take a
at
little time.
some alternatives.
Yeah. Was Susan, is she on? Does she wanna? She has her hand up. Yeah, Susan.
Yeah, I actually would. I think that the curb extensions are one effective tool, and I think we shouldn't dismiss them. They could be adjusted, I'm sure, to address many of the concerns that have been raised tonight. I think, in fact, one of the points that Yasmina made about incorporating stormwater considerations is the reason this has been delayed so long is because we anticipated that there would be a stormwater committee which could help us design effective retention devices or sort of diversionary devices, both for traffic and for runoff. And so I think we shouldn't dismiss those, but I think we do need to have a little more time spent on how best to design them. And I think, you know, we should look into other avenues, to use a pun.
Yeah.
As well.
No, I agree. Yeah, no, I was thinking my last week I would just fade off into the sunset, but I've received lots of feedback from many residents about the Turner Lane speed humps and that they felt that there wasn't communication enough. So I feel like, and then I've received feedback today about this agenda item. It seems to me that residents just want to put the brakes on these plans a little bit, and pun intended, because we all want traffic to slow down. So I'm thinking that maybe we just, look at this, or you all, not me, you all, starting next month, maybe look at this more in depthly. Good point. And Michelle had her hand up too. And then I don't know if Susan has a new hand, but we'll go to Michelle and then Susan. Michelle iPhone, I'm not sure who Michelle iPhone is, but. Michelle, your hand's up, maybe.
Unmute yourself.
Unmute.
Can you unmute her?
No, you can't unmute people. You can ask them to unmute.
Okay, maybe she stepped away. Okay, okay. For the record, I did call on Michelle. Susan, is that a new hand or old hand or?
Yeah, it is a new hand. I just wanted to say thanks very much for all of the consideration of this issue. It's something that we've been involved in, Arthur and I, together with other council members since 2018, I think, with the first mention of walkability. I very much care about it. But I have to leave now. So thank you all. Katie, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Susan.
Hope to see you all on Sunday. Take care.
Okay, see you then.
Okay, see you Sunday.
Bye.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't think Michelle is on, so. Okay, so how do we leave this? Do we just table it?
Can I just summarize
go
what I
ahead.
heard?
Yeah.
There's some concerns both raised before this meeting and at this meeting. And there seems to be a lot of support for these as well, and desire for these from council members and residents. So I can order a traffic study. It can't hurt to have more data.
Right.
It'll be interesting to try to compare it to the data we collected a number of years ago. With the speed humps, I think there's 5 speed humps on both of these streets. So, and I get people complaining about those speed humps constantly. So, we can order a traffic study. That seems pretty easy. And
have a conversation about complaints about speed humps.
let's not. Please,
Zero
please.
patience.
Let me keep summarizing. So one is traffic study, and then 2 is the water task force.
And pedestrian, can you engineer it?
I like that.
Engineer it?
Yeah, I did talk to the engineer about that, and
Pedestrian.
there's a
that.
couple options where there's
Yeah.
Also, no entries.
Mhm.
The sign.
Time, no entry.
Yeah, and the time no entries, I probably just need to start asking around about what. Yeah,
No.
and I can ask section 3 about how they
Yeah.
got those.
But- Yeah, but there's also, they're illegal, from what I recall.
Because
They were unenforceable or.
well, we don't have any enforcement mechanism. It was definitely not.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're a deterrent.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
Which, I mean, clearly not for Spencer.
I can look into it.
But they're a deterrent for most people.
I have notes here for those 3 things. Was there anything else that I missed?
No.
The only thing I would suggest is, before doing the traffic study, just get an estimate. I don't think we want to spend too much on it. I mean, studies are nice, but we don't want to.
I mean, traffic counts.
Traffic.
We know, we do this frequently. It's
I mean,
not-
Yeah, our engineer can do traffic studies. He rents all the equipment, so it's not that expensive for the traffic study. That's not a concern at all. We have paid this engineer to design these along with the speed humps. And we paid for the speed humps, so we haven't paid this engineer for anything. So that proposal was for free.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, so we can just move on.
So
then.
I'll
Look into the
new
next.
fiscal year. This will be a continued project.
All
So
right.
in which case, I think I'm the next.
You'll go
on
right
the
into your
agenda.
manager's report. There you go.
And it is 9:47. And I am on page 25, I think. And I want to start by thanking Katie for your service for 4 years, as well as this last year as chair. It's been an honor and a pleasure working with you.
You as well.
The council bought you some flowers, and there's a
Yeah.
card over there for you as well. Don't read it now, because you might cry.
They're right there. Aren't they lovely?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Thank you for the beautiful flowers.
Oh, really? Okay. I smelled them, but they disappeared.
I took a bouquet making class, so you're welcome for that.
Gorgeous.
The
They're
skills that I didn't know I would need for this job.
Another skill you have.
The last thing on your calendar before you're done, Katie, is we do have the 4th of July party on Sunday. So
now I have to come.
that's from 2 to 5. We are serving adult beverages, and I'll be managing that. So everyone come thirsty.
Good.
We are in the process of renewing the village insurances. Reminder that we have 3 different types of insurance. We have our general liability, which is what everyone thinks about, but we also have workers' comp. And then we have our officers, which includes me, bonds, which is basically if you steal something or if I steal something, the village gets covered. It has cover for that. So,
Oh, cool, so go ahead.
so yeah. I would probably end up in jail too.
We didn't hear that. And Ron Bolt isn't here. And we don't have an ethics meeting.
The FY26 Village Council will meet on July 1st at 7:30 here in the village office. Ron Bolt will be here to swear you all in, and we'll have an administrative meeting to kind of plan out the year and look at the calendar in advance of everything as well. And then I'm going on vacation. I'm going back to Seattle for the first time in 2 years on July 2nd. So just as a heads up, I will be out of the office, but we will at the same time issue the call for volunteers for the different committees and the task forces as well. We'll have to take an official vote and decision on the task forces, whether we're going to roll them forward at a public meeting. So that'll have to be the July 17th meeting. And then a reminder that we take August off here, which means the newsletter will be a joint newsletter. July and August will come out on July 1st. That'll be a joint newsletter. And we also don't have a meeting scheduled for August. So everyone enjoy your summer. We'll still be here, but no council meeting.
Okay.
I know some people have mentioned this and are aware of this, but I have been accepted to the Leadership Montgomery Professional Development Program, which they call CORE. It's connecting our regional executives. I've just noticed, and we'll spend more time this next year paying attention to regional and the state legislator. I'm going to follow very closely this year. I've met with some of the other attorneys that work for some of the other towns that follow the state legislator very closely. And so that's kind of some of my process and thinking about that. Things keep coming up that affect us. I don't know how many people saw that WMATA has changed the bus routes on Connecticut Avenue. That affects our residents. There wasn't a whole lot of fanfare that they just did that without us knowing, but they canceled bus routes. The school's boundary survey is coming quickly. And again, we do have a meeting scheduled for July 7th, and we'll send out a reminder to everybody and an invite to everybody to come to that meeting. I think the town of Chevy Chase offered to host that meeting with the school board chair. So there'll be notices coming out about that. And then I have an entire list of project updates, and I don't need to go over every single one of these, but I did want to mention a couple. Brookville sidewalk. After quite a meeting with State Highway Administration, including me getting pretty intense with them, they have issued us our permit conditionally. There's a number of conditions on it that we have to meet before they will approve the permit, but the permit is approved. I have it in hand. I have the District 3 signature on it. They have approved it. So which means we can start preparing our bid package and we can start posting our bid for a contractor for that project. I will have an updated timeline to you all shortly. And I will also be reaching out to all of the property owners again along Brookville Road over probably July to just rekindle some of those conversations about different issues and things. So that's huge. And then the other ones that we've just been working on recently, all of these projects that we said we were going to do in FY25, we have at least started, and some of them we have completed, like the resident directory. The village website is ready. We have done hours of training this week, and I'm just updating a few things on the new website, and I'm ready to go live maybe as early as July 1st with a new look and feel website, including new pages and new features. There's highlights, and I can do pop-ups, and I have all these tools now at my disclosure, which of course I have to learn how to do. We continue to send text alerts and expand that and ask people for their cell phone numbers. I update that list once a month. So if someone moves in, it takes them a while to roll onto that list, but that's just because it's quite a task to upload the list. Aaron and I are both trained on that at this point, and we do have the ability to train and actually they will provide the training for a council member or two. So next year we can talk about that if someone wants to get trained and download the app and everything, to be able to send alerts in the moment on the weekends and those types of things. The annual survey was successful this year, and I think we can just improve upon what we did and tweak some of the questions. So we have that coming up soon again. And the stormwater study, that was like $100,000 contract with Bayland. So, and that's ongoing. The timeline for that has been pushed back. Now they're saying their final report is going to be in September. So that will probably be that will be a public meeting where they present that finding. I kind of want it to be a council meeting if we can find time or a council meeting that's not too busy, where they can actually come and do it at a council meeting. I think that would be good to just force it on everybody. And then the traffic calming measures and parking enforcement continues to.
Can we have a meeting on traffic enforcement like you did with the State Highway Administration? Get them.
Yeah, I think I need to raise that up or go through the political or threaten the politicals on them for that one, because they have stopped responding to me at the parking enforcement division. I think they just aren't willing to sign new agreements.
So you sent them the contract for review, and that went to a lawyer or a legal office, and that's where it's sitting.
And they haven't responded since then.
Okay, so
So-
we have to shake that loose.
Yeah, so that's still on my to-do list.
Okay.
Yeah. But Brookville sidewalks moving forward, so that's what you're gonna be hearing about
Good.
in the near future.
Forward.
And then I'll put the curb extensions, follow-up studies on it. And I'm gonna tell everyone too, maybe on those 2 streets at least, like, here's what we decided.
Yeah,
We're gonna keep studying it and we're gonna do a traffic study and stuff.
that's great.
Great.
So
Thank
that
you
concludes
so
my
much,
report.
Michael.
Good,
Okay.
good.
Resident comments. Are there any resident comments?
Do we have any residents left?
We
have
do,
a
and
few.
we have one in the room who's tried and true, staying to the end.
If I may just,
Yeah.
quick point of clarification
Yes.
about the Stormwater Committee
Yes.
and the second meeting,
Mhm.
which is that the second meeting, the purpose of the second meeting with the community is to receive feedback on the draft report. It won't be a final report. And then there will be a third meeting, which is really a council meeting. So just I wanted
Oh,
to
maybe that'll be
clarify
it.
that.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yasmin. Okay, any comments? No, I don't see any hands raised. Okay, well, I'm gonna take the council comments if you don't mind. I've timed it. I'm sorry, I know it's late, no more than 2 minutes, I promise. It's part of my swan song as chair for this year and my term on the council. So I'm gonna go fast. And to the residents at home, it took me 3 times to get elected. And I had to actually fight my way to get on the ballot in 2021 due to email timestamp gate, but we won't go there. The year I finally won.
Yeah, by 3 microseconds.
Yes, thank you to the residents who voted for me then and always, and the residents who didn't, because I served all of you equally. And you know, I walked up all 3 times. I walked up, and 4 times actually. I walked up to every home on every street of the VMA to drop off my flyer or water bottle, hand sanitizer, Post-it note, all allowable and under $1, with reminders to vote, and all of which were subjected to some scrutiny by certain residents. But unlike my experience, it seems Alexa enjoyed some smoother sailing to a council seat, and I hope that she will find her new role on the council fulfilling. I cannot express enough accolades about Michael and Aaron. I hope I don't cry. I brought tissue just in case. They are a dynamic duo as village manager and assistant village manager, and have been instrumental to helping me as chair and the council. Thank you, Michael. I now view you and Aaron as my municipal family, as well as my council colleagues. And and families don't always get along or have differences, but I think we worked well together these last 4 years for the most part. At least I hope you all think so too. I gave Ron my appreciation earlier, but I also want to extend that to all of our staffers, Wayne and Doug, and the contractors who have worked for our community along the way. The saying by entertainer Ginger Rogers that she did everything Fred Astaire did backwards in high heels is a personal favorite of mine. It's always resonated with me, and that's how serving on the council as your chair has felt. I felt personally I always had to go above and beyond to prove myself to certain residents whom I discovered, will never be satisfied. But I maintained 2 untimed resident comment sections during our council meetings to offer residents opportunities to be heard, because we only meet once a month. And however, I also received feedback from residents that they prefer not to attend our meetings because they're too lengthy and dominated by certain voices during comment periods of meetings. So what are you going to do, right? So as chair, I tried to move meetings along as efficiently as possible, and I'm getting there, while at the same time inviting guest speakers to speak in real time on hot button issues. Case in point, earlier tonight and last fall, a member of our Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission and Montgomery County Executive Mark Elrich was right here in the room, spoke about obtainable housing plans, which drew our largest resident audiences to those council meetings. So when it came to being chair, I often thought of my mom, who served on the council but didn't get to be chair. I believe this community would have greatly benefited if she had. And to grow thicker skin for this role, I relied on my Polish dad's tough love, attributed to one of his favorite songs, My Way, Frank Sinatra's version. As chair, I did it my way. However, throughout my chairmanship, I did receive some unsolicited advice, again, from certain residents, to draw from the playbooks of past male chairs, because not agreeing with everything on their agendas, I guess, in their eyes, meant I'm not a strong leader. But, you know, we had a few 5-0 votes. But that indicates to me that, you know, I'm not a tyrant, and I appreciate that we're all individuals. So while I did borrow from the playbooks of all of the 3 past chairs who have sat at this table, I probably ended up, and I'm sorry she had to drop off the call, sympathizing and learning the most from Susan. One of my fondest council memories was sitting down with Susan and you, Michael, and Guillaume of La Ferme to plan this year's 40th anniversary program, a day I'm personally proud of. So thank you to Susan. If she listens in later, I think Susan and I have come full circle. As for my other council colleagues, I admire Jeff's unrelenting commitment to residents and efforts to always cordially respond to them. I think you epitomize diplomacy and humanitarianism. I mean, outside the council, he's always volunteering for causes like donating blood, fostering cats, so much more for your community. Thank you, Jeff. And then Arthur, you know, you don't mince words, and I respect that. You get to the point. Your decades and decades of service really are astounding. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for your counsel. And then there's Andrew, the winningest candidate in VMA history. I think, but I was honored to be elected along with you back in 2021 in what was a competitive field. And you have been the winningest colleague as a sounding board, and as well as a supportive friend ever since. So I will miss working with all of you, and I hope this community will be grateful for your continued service. And so if any other council wants to say anything, please let me know if anyone needs to say anything, but otherwise I'll move to adjourn. So.
Well, before we adjourn, I think we all want to express our gratitude for your service, your selflessness, your dedication, your preparation.
Oh, thank you.
Like no other, and really hanging in there, because as I told you before you went for this chairmanship, it's like having a bullseye on your back. It is tough, it's time consuming, and when things go wrong, you're the first call. It's not the other council members, it's the village manager and the chair. So, and I think you've done it with grace and intellect and dedication. So
I second that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add, first of all, Ron has dropped, but I think we all recognize this, is not only how incredibly proud your mom is, but know that she's been with you the whole time, and she's sitting with us now, clapping and applauding. So I think that's important. And then there's a quote which I use all the time. And it's one of my favorites, and I think it does, you epitomize this. So it's my quote of Maya Angelou, and I say it paraphrasing, but the idea that people will rarely remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And Katie, I think without a doubt, and I always shared this, is you are the heart and soul. You are the kindest, most empathetic, and we've been all blessed and privileged to have you. And you're one of a kind.
Oh,
and I think we're sad to see you go, but we know the good reasons, and there's a new journey. But
oh yeah,
don't count it out. Maybe you'll come back at some
well,
point.
you can always call me in an emergency.
And it won't stop the decorations in your party.
Oh no, never.
We will miss you, and we will miss the first gentleman, the current outgoing first gentleman, Steve.
Yes. My body
There
part.
he is. Steve, you get the.
Well, thank you to everyone who attended tonight's meeting. The next council meeting is Thursday, July 17th. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay. So I'll make a motion to end the meeting. Is there a second? Oh, yeah.
So you will officially still be chair on Sunday when we have our
4th
Oh,
of July.
yes.
So that means that we can still call you to the dunking booth.
Oh.
Yeah,
No. You.
It's Rock Creek water, we promise. if the HHS secretary can swim in.
Actually, if the chair can't do that
not- it's not rock
responsibility,
creek
it falls to vice chair, and then the vice chair
She's
won't be
traveling,
there.
unfortunately.
So then maybe it should go to the treasurer. It goes to you, because I'm not sure, I might be late, I might miss the Dunkin'.
That's what you get.
Well, I'll make a motion in the meeting. Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, Mike's up.